What's up? Hey, what's good? What's poppin'? I am Miss Berry. Welcome back to my channel. I appreciate you guys for sliding through and coming to kick it with me. As you guys can see from the title, I'm getting back up into this. I said this. I'm getting back up into Mr. Thomas Sowell. This particular video, as you guys can see, I always read the titles, but I don't necessarily really need to. So I'm not really gonna do too much talking. Y'all know I'm excited to expand my mind, so let's get into it. All right, y'all. So I did change my intro because I just wanted something that was short and simple, straight to the point, not that long, and not too colorful. So, I'm kind of, you know, I'm a colorful person, but I'm also a mellow person. So I feel like, But besides the point, y'all, let's go ahead and press play.
This is the cradle of human civilization. But we have been so beaten over the years. We have been so abused over the years. They enslaved us because they feared us. They colonized us because they feared us. They now have a new project, the neo-colonial project. And I'm told that the neo-colonial project is a twin of another child called colonization. Their mother is imperialism. And imperialism never changes its character. It only changes the masks that it wears. We must be wary of it. It is sad when they came here and abused Christianity, they told us to close our eyes in prayer. And when we opened our eyes, the land had disappeared.
Conquests and cultures. I'm gonna have to go
In
check
one
that
way
book
or
out.
another, virtually the entire continent of Africa was conquered by various European powers, in part because such conquest used up relatively little of these nations' total military or economic resources, rather than because of any great value of these African possessions. All sorts of special interests in Europe, missionaries, businessmen, politicians, or the military, had their own reasons to urge the creation and expansion of colonialism in Africa, but officials responsible for the public treasury were often opposed, viewing the matter in terms of financial costs and gains. In special cases, such as the Congo or South Africa, with their valuable mineral resources, the conquest might repay its costs, but these were exceptions rather than the rule. In a later era, when the costs of maintaining European rule became higher, whether in financial, military, or political terms, vast areas of Africa were abandoned as rapidly as they had once been conquered. Almost all the countries on this huge continent achieved independence within a span of 2 decades, beginning around the middle of the 20th century. While pre-colonial Africa had its own economic skills, institutions, and social patterns, the coming of European civilization nevertheless had a profound impact, especially in sub-Saharan Africa, where Europeans often introduced the plow, literacy, wheeled vehicles, and other fundamental advances, along with much suffering associated with conquest and continuing subjugation. The mere imposition of law and order, the cessation of intertribal warfare as the colonial powers established their hegemony over the contending Africans, had profound economic implications, as it once had in Roman Britain or later in Scotland. For example, land once too militarily vulnerable to cultivate could now be farmed. Thus, although whites seized vast amounts of land in Rhodesia, Africans there cultivated more of their own land than they had before the European conquests. European medicine, railroads, schools, and numerous commercial products also transformed Africa's economies and cultures. Europe's economic impact on Africa was far greater than Africa's economic effect on Europe. Contrary to various economic theories of imperialism, Africa was not a major outlet for European investment or
I'm sorry to just pause it like that to say what I'm gonna say. That just looked like a boat full of Legos. That's exactly what it looked like, even though I know it's not, y'all.
exports. In the early 20th century, Britain's investments in Canada alone were larger than its investments in Africa and India put together, and more British money went to the United States than to Canada. France and Germany were likewise reluctant to sink much of their money into Africa. Commercial trade with Africa was similarly trivial for the economies of the European imperial powers. On the eve of the First World War, Germany exported more than 5 times as much to a small country like Belgium than to its own colonial empire, which was larger than Germany itself. France likewise exported 10 times as much to Belgium as to all its vast holdings in Africa. Out of Germany's total exports to the world, less than 1% went to its colonies in Africa. Africa was somewhat more significant to Europe as a source of imports, though most of these imports to Europe from Africa came from a relatively few places, such as the South African gold mines and diamond fields, or West Africa's cocoa and palm oil regions. Overall, Britain received less than 7% of its imports from Africa, less than from any other continent, including thinly populated Australia. Nor were African colonies usually important sources of profit to European investors, or of revenue to European governments. German colonies, for example, in the years leading up to World War I, consistently absorbed expenditures greatly exceeding the revenues raised within the colonies, with taxpayers in Germany having to make up the difference. In the private economy, of 19 firms owning sisal plantations in German colonies, only 8 paid dividends. Only 4 out of 22 firms with cocoa plantations paid dividends, as did only 8 out of 58 rubber plantations, and only 3 out of 48 diamond mining companies. Viewed from Africa, however, the situation looked quite different. While trade with Africa was a small part of the total international trade of the European colonial powers, trade with these powers was a substantial portion of the total international trade of the African colonies. Moreover, African exports and imports grew substantially during the colonial era. In German East Africa, for example, exports of peanuts, rubber, cocoa, coffee, and sisal all grew several-fold in the relatively brief period from 1905 to 1913. Similarly dramatic increases in exports from British, French, and Belgian colonies in Africa occurred between 1938 and 1958. Correspondingly, Africa had rising imports, as well as more consumption of locally produced goods, both raising the living standards of Africans. Real consumption in the Belgian Congo, for example, rose 77% in less than a decade, between 1950 and 1958. In addition, the European impact on colonial Africa included creation of virtually the whole modern industrial and commercial sectors of many African countries. Europeans also introduced new crops and new farming techniques, as well as creating the modern infrastructure of roads, harbor facilities, rail lines, telegraphs, motor transport, and the like. One small indication of what this meant economically is that a single railroad boxcar could carry as much freight as 300 human beings, the usual method of transport in much of Africa, and could cover in 2 days a distance that would take a caravan 2 months.
Wow.
In addition to the economic changes directly attributable to the European conquerors, the consolidation of vast regions of Africa under a new law and order encouraged large-scale immigration of entrepreneurial groups from India and Lebanon, and these Indians and Lebanese created new retail and even international trade networks in East and West Africa, respectively. So dominant did the Indians become over vast regions of East Africa that the rupee became the prevailing currency in much of that region. However, just as Indians and Lebanese settled in Africa mostly after European imperial rule was established there, so many of them departed or were forced out after colonial rule ended. In the meantime, however, they added greatly to the economic development of the African continent.
Okay, y'all. So we're gonna end that video right there like that. So I enjoyed just watching, and I'm writing this other video down that I seen that I want to do because you can just never have enough information. But anyway, I just like watching it because and I didn't talk as much because it's just information. I was enjoying, seeing the different pictures and like just taking in the information that he was actually saying. So I didn't really have too much to say on it. But anyway, I want to know, what do you guys think? Do you think that this proves that the colonization benefited Africans and not Europeans. I mean, from the facts presented here, it seemed like, the Europeans came in showing, Africans a whole lot of different things, that they could take and incorporate and pass on, you know what I'm saying? So that was a lot, that they extended and, helped with this or did with that. And I'm not 100%. There we go. Okay. I was gonna say I'm not 100% sure if this is playing, but anyway, y'all. But I love digging into Thomas's soul. I said Thomas's soul. That sounded so weird. But I love digging into his mind and seeing what he's talking about. Like he sounds very, educated. Like, not saying that, people sound some people do sound uneducated, and I feel like sometimes, majority of the time, that's on purpose, and it's because lack of XYZ, but whatever. But he just sounds like he knows what he's talking about. Like he sounds very confident in the things that he say, which from somebody like me who's discovering him and learning, it's more so like, okay, so he sound like he's talking about. So like, he don't sound like untrustworthy. But at the same time, it's still good to go back and just do your research and search, which is normally what I do. I have my book where I just, I research. I'm really deep diving into this. So outside of YouTube, I'm still doing my research because these are things that, it's not just gonna happen for me just watching YouTube videos. I need to do some outside work outside of YouTube. But anyway, guys, I need to put some chapstick on. I keep licking my lips. Comment down below, y'all. Let me know what you guys want to see on this channel. As I always say, don't be afraid to just let me know. It don't necessarily have to be Mr. Thomas Sowell. Don't forget to also like up this video, thumbs it up. And if you are new to my channel, what are you doing? Go ahead and hit that red subscribe button and ring that bell so when I drop a new video, you will know, you won't miss it, and you'll be right here. And as always, I appreciate you guys for coming through and coming to kick it with me. And until next time.